Welcome to part 2 of our lecture on bonds, which is Learning Outcome 10-3. We left off learning about how to record the issuance of bonds at face value. And we said that the difficulty with bonds is that when you originally develop your bond issue and propose that to your stockholders, that bond issue includes a stated rate, the rate at which you're going to be paying bond interest every 6 months or every year, depending on what your bond says. But the difficulty is that by the time that bond actually gets sold, the amount that investors are demanding from investments, we call that the market rate of interest, may differ than what you're offering. So what if the amount that you're offering is greater than the market rate of interest? Then everyone's going to want to buy your bond, but you're also going to be stuck paying higher rates of interest than other financial instruments. But what if the opposite is true? What if the rate that you're offering is less than the market rate of interest? Well, then no one will want to buy your bond. So the solution is that we are going to set the issue price of the bond to yield the market rate of interest. In other words, we're going to adjust the amount of cash we receive up front from our bond investors. And between the cash price and the semi-annual or annual interest payments, everyone will get the market rate. Now, in the first example that we covered last time, the interest rates matched. The market rate of interest matched the stated rate of interest. And so the amount that you're going to receive for the bond, for the issuance of the bond, is the same amount that you're going to have to pay back, the face value. In that case, the bond quote will be 100, which means 100% of par. That's when the stated rate equals the market rate. Now let's consider what happens when the stated rate is greater than the market rate. You're paying interest greater than the market rate of interest, so everyone's going to want to buy your bond. Well, then we're going to adjust the issue price on the bond to be more than the face value. The quote in the paper or in various financial media will be more than 100. The stated rate, your bond interest rate, is greater than the market, so you're going to be paying more interest than other financial investments. In that case, if we want everyone to receive the lower market rate, then we're going to price your bond greater than the face value. To figure out the amount of money you're going to get as your issue price, we take the face value, in this case 100,000, and we multiply by the issue price. In this case, the issue price is 107, which really means 107%, and you will get paid more than $100,000, more than face value. Yet, you will only have to pay back $100,000. Now that sounds like a really bad deal for the bond buyer. Why would they give you $107,000 and then only receive back $100,000? Well, the reason is because they're getting a higher rate of interest than they could get from other financial instruments. So they may be paying an extra $7,000, which we call the premium, but they're going to get that back and more from the semi-annual or annual interest payments, so that between the higher price, which will actually reduce their take home on the bond, or the amount that they're going to receive as total interest on the bond, they are going to be getting higher interest payments. So to review our journal entry to issue that bond, we take the face value and multiply it by the bond quote with a percent. That helps us determine how much money we're going to receive. That will be our debit to cash. We always credit bonds payable for the face value because that's how much we have to pay back. We're only going to pay back $100,000. That extra $7,000, which we call the premium, we're going to use that money to pay our bondholders a higher rate of interest. They're going to pay more because they're getting more in interest. So when we go to pay interest, this is a two-part calculation. First of all, we calculate the cash interest to be paid based on the stated rate. The 9% we're using here is what it is stated on the face of the bond, which tells bondholders the rate of interest they're going to get paid. So 100,000 times 9%, and since this is annual interest, 12/12ths, that's how much you're going to be paying out. However, this $7,000 of premium, this is the extra amount that you received because of the difference in interest rates. Some of that $9,000 comes from the extra money that they paid you up front. So we're going to spread this $7,000 in extra money you got up front over the life of the bond at the same time as we do the interest payments. So we're going to take that $7,000 of premium and we're going to divide by the number of interest payments. Since this bond goes for 5 years, and the payments are annual, we will divide by 5, and that amount will be $1,400. Now notice we debit that premium because originally we credited it, so we're going to debit it to reduce the premium by the amount we're using up to help pay that $9,000. And our true interest expense is going to be the amount we have to pay out, $9,000, minus the money that they gave us up front to do it, or at least a portion of that money. That process of debiting the premium and spreading it out over the life of the bond issue is called amortization of bond premium. Okay, now we're going to be doing a problem. Oh, before we do that, I apologize. On the balance sheet, this is what that premium is going to look like. We're going to take the bond payable account, add in the premium, and this was, by the way, on the date that you issued the bond, so the full $7,000, and the carrying value is $107,000. At the end of the year, when you make this bond interest payment and amortize a portion of that premium, $1,400, then this premium will come down $1,400 or let's see, 7,000 minus 1,400. This will come down to 5,600 after you do that premium amortization. And each year that you do your bond interest payment and premium amortization, this premium will keep coming down further and further until there is none left, and your carrying value will be $100,000, equal to the bonds payable. Now we're going to be trying a problem. We will be doing CP 10-6. And let me make that a little bit bigger for you. Okay. This is Southwest Corporation, and they issued bonds with the following details. The face value is $700,000. That's how much has to be paid back at maturity. The interest rate that the bond promises is 10% per year, so once a year, payable each December 31st. The bond is dated January 1st, and it's due 5 years from that date. The annual accounting period ends December 31st, and the bonds were issued at 103, or 103% of face value. We know from looking at that must be a premium. That must exist because our bond interest is higher than what the market rate is. So people are going to pay us more than $700,000. and we're going to pay them back just $700,000. The reason they're willing to do that is because the bond interest payments that we make every year are greater than they would receive from other sources. In fact, it tells us here the market rate was only 9%. Your bonds are paying 10%. So they're going to have to pay more to get more. First of all, they want us to compute the cash received from the bond issuance. So we take the face value, which is $700,000, and we multiply by the issue price with a percent by it, so 103%. And the amount that we're going to receive in cash is $721,000. So let's make our journal entry. Let's debit cash for $721,000. Bonds payable always gets credited at face value. That's the amount you have to pay back. $700,000, and the $21,000 extra that they're giving you is called the premium on bonds payable. They're paying more to you up front because they're going to be receiving more in annual interest payments. Let's calculate those now, because the next thing they want us to do is calculate interest expense and record the interest payment and premium amortization. So we know we're going to have to credit cash for the amount of interest payments. So let's start this entry from the bottom up. Let's first calculate how much cash interest we have to pay. And that would be the P times R times T. The P would be our face value. Okay, so that's 700,000 times the bond stated rate. That's the interest rate we promised to give the bond holders, 10%. And this is an annual interest payment, so 12/12. So we're going to be paying out $70,000. Now let's take this premium, the extra money our bondholders gave us up front, and we're going to debit that account. We're going to use some of that $21,000 to pay those bondholders that interest. And this is called the straight line method of premium or discount amortization. Take the premium and divide by the number of interest payments. This bond goes for 5 years and pays interest annually or once a year. So we're going to divide by 5. 21,000 divided by 5 is 4,200. So we're going to do the opposite. Premium is credited. We're going to debit that account for 4,200. That's step 2. And our third step is to debit interest expense for the difference. 70,000 minus 4,200, or 65,800. In other words, because they gave you money up front, which you're using to help make the bond interest payments, your true amount of interest expense is really less than $70,000. Now let's take a moment to just show what the interest expense would be like at the end of 2018, and also what it would look like on our balance sheet. The interest expense for 2018 is right here, $65,800. We've already calculated that. And on the balance sheet, we would show the bond payable at $700,000, and then we're going to add in the premium on bonds payable. I'm going to do my calculation down here. Our original amount of our premium was $21,000, but we just debited that account for $4,200. So our premium is now down to $16,800. Premiums are added to bonds payable to get the carrying value. So our carrying value would be $716,800. Now let's make the journal entry for the payment of interest and amortization of premium for 2019. And because we're using the straight line method, it's going to look exactly the same as 2018. And so will the remaining 3 years. Straight line means that entry will be used year after year after year for 5 years. So we will debit interest expense for the amount we already calculated, $65,800. Debit the premium on bonds payable, $4,200, and credit cash for $70,000. So our interest expense for 2019 remains at $65,800. Now this method of premium amortization is not the recommended one. The effective interest rate method is preferable. However, when the results you get are similar, you're allowed to use this method. And very frankly, we're trying to keep things a little bit easier for you. But you can find the effective interest rate method in the text. Okay, so what does the balance sheet look like at December 31st, 2019? Let's take our bonds payable and add to that the premium. And again, I'm going to calculate below. Our premium was originally $21,000, and now we have amortized $4,200 twice. We amortized that amount in 2018 and in 2019, so that comes to $8,400. If you want, you can make a T account for the premium, put the $21,000 on the credit side, and then put the two $4,200 debits on the debit side and calculate the balance. I've just kind of done it here mathematically. That $12,600 needs to be added to $700,000, and that gives us a carrying value of $712,600. So let me show you how you could do that with a T account. We would post the original credit of $21,000. Then in 2018 we would post a debit of $4,200, and when we calculated the balance of that, it would be $16,800. That would give us that amount there, 2018. And then again, when we post another debit of $4,200, it would give us a balance at the end of 2019 of $12,600. So that's another way of handling that premium. So our next mini lecture will deal with issuing bonds at a discount.